Tune Review, print speaking to the blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the National Podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @TuneReview, that is @ CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@tunereview.com, that is INFORMATION@CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
This is from The National on Friday the 17th of February from the news section. Donald Trump labelled Nicola Sturgeon a failed woke extremist. This article is written by Adam Robertson. Donald Trump has bid good riddance to Nicola Sturgeon following her resignation as he labelled her a failed woke extremist. The former president also accused Sturgeon of fighting him over his golf courses in Scotland. It was recently revealed that the company which owns Trump's Ayrshire golf course posted a more than £15 million loss in 2021. In a statement, Trump said, "Good riddance to failed woke extremist Nicola Sturgeon of Scotland." Ben Jacobs quotes Trump's statement. This crazed leftist symbolises everything wrong with identity politics. Sturgeon thought it was okay to put a biological man in a women's prison, and if that wasn't bad enough, Sturgeon fought for a gender recognition reform bill that would have allowed 16-year-old children to change their gender without medical advice. I built the greatest golf properties in the world in Scotland, but she fought me all the way, making my job much more difficult. The wonderful people of Scotland are much better off without Sturgeon in office. There are a number of candidates who could replace Sturgeon as the party's leader, with the SNP confirming on Wednesday that nominations are now open. It is not yet known when the First Minister will officially step down, and with no obvious successor waiting in the wings, it is expected the party will face its first proper leadership election in nearly 20 years. That article was written by Adam Robertson. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of February from the politics section. Joanna Cherry won't bid to replace Nicola Sturgeon as SNP leader. This is an exclusive and written by Judith Duffy. SNP MP Joanna Cherry has ruled out taking part in the race to succeed Nicola Sturgeon, saying the next leader must come from Holyrood, have ministerial experience and represent a break from the past. The KC, who has been an MP for Edinburgh South West since 2015, said the gerrymandering of rules for Holyrood selection had made it a practical impossibility for her to take part in the contest. Her plan to stand for Ruth Davidson's seat in 2021 Scottish Parliament's election did not go ahead after a rule change approved by the SNP's governing body meant that she would have to resign as an MP first. Despite some commentators now tipping her as a dark horse in the leadership contest, Cherry confirmed she won't be running for the leader of the SNP this time. Writing in The National, she hinted at who she would like to see take over from Sturgeon and said the new leader must be able to reach out across the independence movement. She said, "Our next leader must be able to become First Minister, and so she must come from within the current Holyrood contingent, and it should be someone with at least some ministerial experience. I stand ready to give my support to the candidate who I believe is the best placed to break with the past and to put together a team to deliver the root and branch change needed. That change must involve a recognition that independence will only be achieved by a team effort. The messianic leadership model has not worked. The new leader needs to reach out across the party and the movement and to adopt a more collegiate approach. If we are to go forward united to achieve our goal of independence, we need to face up to what has gone wrong and put it right. Cherry said the SNP's first leadership election for nearly 20 years could be a turning point for the independence movement, but only if it can honestly appraise where things have gone wrong. She said she believed the party's special conference planned for the 19th of March should be postponed, and that debate about the way forward for independence should now be a part of the leadership election, along with other big issues such as the cost of living crisis, the economy, the NHS, ferries and bridging the attainment gap. Whoever wins must be allowed to develop her stance and vision in the collaboration with a new team, unfettered by the strategy adopted by the previous leadership, she added. She went on, the reset which the SNP's new leader and her team must achieve should extend beyond the independence strategy and government policy to reform of all our internal party democracy and to reform of the democratic institutions of our parliament and civic society. Never again should our party be run by a small impenetrable cabal with the democratic choices of the party membership for NEC outvoted by members co-opted without a democratic mandate. That article was written by Judith Duffy. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of February from the Politics section. John Swinney rules himself out of SNP leadership race. This is written by Lucy Garcia. Deputy First Minister John Swinney has ruled himself out of the SNP leadership race. Alongside Constitution Secretary Angus Robertson, Finance Secretary Kate Forbes, Health Secretary Humza Yousaf and other big names in the Scottish Government, Swinney has been seen as one of the possible successors to Nicola Sturgeon. However, he told the Courier on Thursday that he does not intend to stand. The 58-year-old joined the SNP in 1979 and held a number of posts with the party at local and national level before becoming Sturgeon's Deputy First Minister in 2016. The politician, who has also represented North Tayside and Westminster, said, "For the best part of the last 40 years, I have had the privilege of being at the very heart of formulating the strategy of the SNP. From a very poor starting point in the 1980s, I am proud to have played my part in building the SNP into a successful party of government in Scotland with an impressive electoral record. But," he added, "the SNP needed to consider carefully how to pursue its aims after the route to an independence referendum had been blocked. To create the space for that fresh perspective to emerge, I have decided not to be a candidate for leadership in the SNP," he said. "At this critical moment, I believe there must be an open debate within the SNP about our direction. I encourage those who stand for the election to bring forward perspectives that anchor the SNP in the mainstream of Scottish politics, which is an absolutely critical requirement for the future success of our cause. For my part, I will continue to do what I have done since I was 15, and that is to contribute constructively to advance the interests of the SNP, Scotland, and the cause of Scottish independence." That was written by Lucy Garcia. This is from The National on Friday the 17th of February from the Politics section. SNP set out when new leader will be elected after Nicola Sturgeon quits. This is written by Craig Megan. The SNP's special conference on the path to Indy Ref 2 has been postponed, the party has announced. It comes as the timetable for the leadership contest was released following Nicola Sturgeon's resignation. After a meeting of the party's National Executive Committee on Thursday night, those eyeing the top job have until February the 24th to submit their nomination, with the vote open between March the 13th and 27th. The results of the contest will be made public as soon as the result is determined, the party said, and after the candidates have been told. Health Secretary Humza Yousaf is expected to announce he is running to become Scotland's next First Minister, but MP Joanna Cherry has ruled herself out of the battle. Lorna Finn, the party's National Secretary, said, "I'm pleased to confirm that SNP NEC has tonight agreed a timetable for party members to select a new leader of our party and country. Nicola has been the outstanding politician of this generation. We are very fortunate that she will remain an SNP MSP and a leading campaigner for an independent Scotland. But the SNP is full of talented individuals, and they now have the opportunity to put themselves forward, and our new leader will lead us into the final phase of Scotland's journey towards independence. Should there be a contest with 2 or more applicants, then the selection of the new leader will be held on a democratic one-member, one-vote basis. Nominations for leader opened at 23:59 on 15th of February 2023 and will close at 12 noon on 24th of February 2023. The ballot will be open at noon on 13th of March 2023 and will close at noon on 27th of March 2023. The SNP had planned for members to meet on March the 19th to discuss the strategy for a second independence referendum. Sturgeon had backed the use of the next general election as a de facto referendum, but the party on Thursday said it would be postponed. Finn said, "Democracy is in crisis in the UK right now, but the SNP and Scotland's future must and will be decided by the ballot box. It would be wrong to have a newly elected leader tied to a key decision on how we deliver democracy in Scotland in the face of continued Westminster intransigence. Therefore, the party's Special Democracy Conference, previously planned for Sunday, March the 19th, is postponed. SNP members, the lifeblood of this party and movement, will be updated in due course on details of a rearranged event once the new party is in place." That article was written by Craig Megan.
This is from the National on Monday the 20th of February 2023. This is from the news section. The headline reads, "Jordan Peterson labels Lorna Slater toxically feminine." This article is by Adam Robertson. Right-wing Professor Jordan Peterson has said Scottish Greens co-leader Lorna Slater is toxically feminine in a response to an article she wrote for The National. In her column published on Friday, Slater said that the First Minister was targeted in the very cruel and misogynistic way that women so often are. "So many wonderful women have told me that they look in horror at the abuse and the way that women in public eye are treated and have concluded that it's not for them," she wrote. Peterson, who was previously suspended from Twitter after saying transgender actor Elliot Page had her breast removed by a criminal physician, labelled Slater toxically feminine. The professor retweeted the article, which was titled "Nicola Sturgeon was a wrest from power's usual toxic masculinity," and said precisely what someone toxically feminine would claim and retweet at Lorna Slater. The Canadian academic and psychologist has a large US following as a conservative media personality and author. He recently weighed in on the debate surrounding Scotland's gender legislation when he retweeted a post from J.K. Rowling. The Harry Potter author had written, "I don't know about you, but excluding women from women's prisons just because they've got penises, male pattern baldness, and have committed a couple of rapes seems awfully turfy to me." Peterson added, "The internal contradictions and the implicit narrative are beginning to produce cracks, not least in the Scottish leader's psyche." Note derives desperate giggle. He also shared an opinion piece which blamed the trans prisoner fiasco entirely on Nicola Sturgeon. The academic also found himself at the centre of controversy following an appearance on the BBC's Question Time. The outrage focused on the discussion around the experiences of racism described to MPs by former Yorkshire cricketer Azim Rafiq. When talking about the issue, Peterson twice used air quotes around the word racism a choice which was questioned by Stephen Flint at the time. Peterson said racism is a global and vague term, before adding that he did not believe discussions around structural or institutional racism were helpful. That does not mean racism doesn't exist, again using quotes around the word. The article was by Adam Robertson. This is from the National on Monday the 20th of February 2023. This is from the news section. The headline reads, Kate Forbes officially enters SNP leadership race. This article is by Hamish Morrison. Kate Forbes has officially announced she will run to be next leader of the SNP. The Finance Secretary tweeted, I am today launching my bid to become Scotland's next First Minister, with the vision, experience and competence to inspire voters across Scotland. In a statement she said, the nation and the Yes movement are at a major crossroads. The choices we make in the next few weeks will have a profound impact on our future and our children's future. I cannot sit back and watch our nation thwarted on the road to self-determination. Our small, independent neighbours enjoy welfare, fairer and greener societies, and so can we. We urgently need to unleash the full talent of the SNP, the wider Yes movement and the country at large. We need to choose strong, competent leadership to deliver independence, the leadership that I can offer. She continued, I believe we need somebody who can unite the party and the Yes movement. I will reach out and listen so that every member feels valued and able to contribute. That is important within the party, but it is also important if we are to persuade others of the merits of independence. We need a leader who is bold and brave and energised, who inspires confidence from the SNP membership and who inspires the confidence of the people of Scotland. From the youngest to the oldest, regardless of where you live or who you are, we need somebody who voters can trust, who has integrity and commitment. I am that leader, and I want to lead the party into better days. It is now 3-horse race to succeed Nicola Sturgeon, who announced she was stepping down last week. Health Secretary Humza Yousaf and Gender Recognition Reform rebel Ash Regan, who served as a Community Safety Minister before quitting in protest, announced their bids on Sunday. The article was by Hamish Morrison. This is from the National on Monday the 20th of February 2023. This is from the politics section. The headline reads, March for Scottish Independence announced for Edinburgh in April. This article is by Jane MacLeod. Yes to Indie has announced it will hold a March for Independence in Edinburgh on April 1st, days after the new SNP leader will have been selected. The organisation says it wants to show the incoming First Minister the passion, desire and fire the grassroots independence movement has for the fight ahead, as it demands Scotland is given a democratic right to choose its own future. Sir Alber Pipes and Drums will lead the march. It will start from Johnston Terrace at 1 p.m. and make its way along the side of Edinburgh Castle and down the Royal Mile to the Scottish Parliament. Volunteer stewards are needed. Yes to Indie have also just announced its annual event at Kirkcaldy Promenade on June the 10th. It will be the third year in a row it has held the event in Fife, bringing colour to the beachfront. Yes to Indie Glasgow's applications for its time event on October 14 was submitted last year and is already published on Glasgow City Council's Future Public Processions website. A spokesperson for the group said, in these very strange political times, the Yes movement must show unity and unite and build on the momentum that's been lost since COVID-19. Rome wasn't built in a day, but as one we can achieve so much more. We are sad to see Nicola Sturgeon's departure. What an amazing politician, best we've witnessed in my lifetime. She's given so much effort and time to the cause of independence and in choosing our own future. That article was by Jane MacLeod. This is from the National on Monday the 20th of February 2023. This is from the news section. The headline reads, Nicola Sturgeon, ex-Plaid Cymru leader invites FM to Wales. This article is by Adam Robertson. The former leader of Plaid Cymru has invited Nicola Sturgeon to take some time out of the rat race and visit Wales when she steps down as First Minister. Sturgeon announced she would be resigning after more than 8 years in office, although she will remain until her successor is appointed. Leanne Wood, who led Plaid Cymru from 2012 until 2018, said she invited Sturgeon to take some time for walking on our mountains or across our beaches, and that they had both supported each other at different times. She told BBC Radio Wales Sunday Supplement, "Hopefully she'll be able to take some time for herself, some time for self-care, some time out of the rat race. I'll be around if she wants to take up my offer on that, and she's already responded quite positively." Wood was the first woman to lead Plaid Cymru, a party which campaigns for Welsh independence. She continued, "Leadership can be quite a lonely place. The buck stops with you, and you alone. You have to take decisions sometimes on your own, despite advice and support. That can be difficult, and we've both supported each other through that at different times." Wood now serves as a member of the Independent Commission on the Constitutional Future of Wales, and said that she may work with Sturgeon in the future. "I'm sure there'll maybe be pieces of work that we'll do together. We've started exploring some of that. I'm not in a position to reveal what at this stage, but we go back a long way, and I'm sure we'll go into the future a long way too." The race to replace Nicola Sturgeon as First Minister is well underway, with both Humza Yousaf and Ash Regan declaring their intention to run on Sunday. Elsewhere, Keith Brown, Neil Gray and Mary McCallan ruled themselves out despite being tipped as potential contenders. Scotland's Business Minister Ivan McKee told BBC Radio Scotland that it was his understanding Kate Forbes would be making an announcement on her intentions later on Monday. He has already given her his backing should she choose to run. "I think Kate is a hugely talented individual. I've had the pleasure of working with her over the past 7 years and seen firsthand what she is able to deliver. Her focus on the things that are important to Scotland and her ability to engage with people on a very real and authentic level can persuade them of her case," he said. That article was by Adam Robertson. This is from The National on Monday the 20th of February 2023. This is from the news section. The headline reads, "Union leaders warned 8,500 arts jobs are at risk due to funding cuts." This article is by Brian Ferguson. Union leaders warned 8,500 jobs could be put at risk by funding cuts to Creative Scotland. 8 unions representing actors, musicians, artists, writers, crew and technicians called for a rethink over £7 million cuts in the Arts Agency's grant for the next financial year. They have urged the Scottish Government to reverse the perverse 10% cut and warned it will affect already low-paid arts workers. The alliance includes the Musicians' Union, the Scottish Artists' Union, BEC2, Equity, the Writers' Guild, the Scottish Society of Playwrights and the Society of Authors. The Scottish Trade Union Congress wrote to Deputy First Minister John Swinney and Culture Secretary Angus Robertson on behalf of the unions. It comes days after the launch of a campaign calling on the government to pull Scotland's culture sector back from the brink. More than 12,000 supporters have already backed an online petition launched by the UK-wide grassroots campaign for the Arts Alliance. It highlighted a string of closures in recent months, including the Filmhouse Cinemas in Edinburgh and Aberdeen, the Blue Arrow Jazz Club in Glasgow, and the Nevis Ensemble Street Orchestra. The STUC warned that going ahead with Creative Scotland's budget cut would put at risk 5,000 permanent jobs, along with more than 3,500 freelance workers. The letter from STUC General Secretary Roseanne Foyer states, "We've been campaigning for increased support for all workers right across Scotland to receive the urgent assistance they need to survive the cost of living emergency. Among the most precarious of these are those in our creative industries. They are twice as likely as other workers to be working 2 jobs and disproportionately subject to low pay and insecure work. They've also been disproportionately impacted by the pandemic. At a time when we should be rebuilding our creative industries, cutting arts funding is the wrong choice at the wrong time. It seems perverse to simply cut funding in this way without any seeming rationale for doing so." Adam Adjian, National Officer at Equity, said, "Let's be clear, with inflation into double digits, this isn't a 10% cut to the arts funding. It's much worse than that. These cuts shouldn't be used to justify low pay offers or the end of stable work. We call on the government to revisit these economically illiterate cuts. It will also give fair warning to employers that we will not allow them to use this as an excuse to degrade terms, conditions or pay offers. No tactic will be off the table. Musicians Union Regional Organiser Caroline Sewell said, "Our members and other workers across the creative industries are currently facing a perfect storm, having been amongst the hardest hit by the pandemic and the least supported. This sits within a bleak context of ever-reducing income streams, the impact of Brexit and the cost of living crisis, from which no one is exempt, but particularly those who are already in low-paid, precarious work. We urgently need to see the reversal of the proposed cuts to Creative Scotland and long-term sustainable investment across the arts elsewhere." Back2 Negotiations Officer Paul McManus said, "Many organisations are now facing deficit budgets for the coming year, and with that comes the reality of significant job losses, cuts in earnings and venues closing in an industry which is already struggling to cope with a mass exodus of workers who can no longer afford to live off the disgracefully low wages and poor conditions historically prevalent in an industry that creates many millions of pounds in inward investment." Peter Arnott, one of Scotland's leading playwrights, said, "Scottish theatre has never been as culturally weak as it is now. Like everyone else, we've suffered the multiple shocks of the pandemic and the following recession. 2 or 3 years down the line, and no one is commissioning us for a future that doesn't look like being there. We need to arrest the culture of pessimism. The current cuts are disastrous." Campaign for Arts Director Jack Gamble said, "In just a few short days, thousands of people from communities across Scotland have joined our campaign to urge the Scottish Government to rethink again. So much is at stake, not just for those who work in the cultural industries and depend on them for their livelihoods, but for all of us. When the arts and cultural flourish, we all benefit personally, socially and economically. Especially now, the arts should be supported, not cut." A government spokesperson said, "We value the importance of cultural organisations and their contribution to the well-being of the country to promote the arts, provide employment and engage with communities across Scotland. It is for these reasons, among many others, that we provided £256 million in COVID support funding to help them navigate the challenges brought on by the pandemic. However, given the current difficult public expenditure environment, there are significant pressures on funding. We've provided Creative Scotland with over £33 million over 5 years to compensate for generally reduced lottery funding. When we are facing difficult funding decisions, the time is right for Creative Scotland to draw on the lottery reserves available to them." That article was by Brian Ferguson.
From the National, Monday the 20th of February 2023, from the comment section. Culture wars sadly look to define SNP leadership election. Article by Steph Payton. Nicola Sturgeon's decision to resign as First Minister marks the end of a political story for Scotland that started with the 2007 parliamentary election. Having taken a brief period of respite for nearly 300 years, the re-established Scottish Parliament was ready by its third election to deviate from Westminster's set menu of political parties. The country had rejected the two barking dogs of Westminster to back a third option, a formerly fringe nationalist party led by Alex Salmond. 16 years ago, Scotland chose to hand the reins of its still fledgling parliament to an outsider party, and the country was forever changed. It seems a trite observation to point to any political event and confidently declare the obvious, that things change when they changed. But compare the past decade and a half of politics in Scotland to our Parliament's counterpart in the City of Westminster, and the impact of that moment becomes clear. Westminster has come to be defined by a political process that involves meekly passing power back and forth between two political behemoths, and watching as they drag themselves through endless failures and scandals until, inevitably, the public gets tired enough to give the other one a go again. It's a hopeless affair. For all their faults, the SNP at least seem to be going somewhere, to have political aspirations beyond just holding on to power until resigningly handing it back. Maybe that's why the SNP's grip in Scottish politics in Holyrood has been what it is. And following Salmond came Sturgeon, a future leader ready for the role. She has led the country for 8 years through significant challenges, failures and victories, and will be remembered as a respected and competent leader who led Scotland at a time when the Conservative government floundered from one fool to another. There is no clear successor, no one with a profile that even comes close. The Parliament's future is uncertain, now for the first time since that historic win. Brian Cox thinks the next party leader should be Angus Robertson. The right-wing press seem enamoured with Kate Forbes. Every SNP member and their nan probably has someone in mind, though so far as the only confirmed candidates as of yesterday were Humza Yousaf and Ash Regan. With knives sharpened and handshakes at the ready, the race to find the next First Minister has begun in earnest, though I doubt the campaign could ever reach the heights of when a former SNP councillor, now the General Secretary of the ALBA Party, shared campaign literature in which he had photoshopped his face onto the body of a colleague, even though standing for an election in which he wasn't a candidate. No, I expect this election to be a far less humorous affair. The lack of an obvious successor is a crack that, for the past few years, has been threatening to become a pothole, the likes of which would rival even the city of Glasgow's roads. And, like the city's approach to fixing said potholes, it's unclear how long a replacement will last in the political climate they are set to inherit. Sturgeon's record would suggest there is no political storm that could not be weathered by her abilities, but a new leader will be taking hold of a party whose failings on education and healthcare cannot be ignored, and who have a firm target on their back from the little soldiers of the British culture wars. Already, the vultures of Westminster are ruffling their feathers in glee at the prospects of securing some of the voters who will potentially drift away from the SNP in light of these changes, ready to celebrate another weary gain from the actions of their opposition, over actually having done anything to earn it. Though Labour might want to press pause in the Prosecco given the lack of profile boasted by its own leadership. I suspect that what set Sturgeon apart from other political leaders in the UK in the eyes of the public was that, for all intents and purposes, she set her own agenda, in contrast to the weathercocks of her opposition. And, while we can attack and criticise the positions themselves, they seemingly sincerely held it at a time when most UK politicians treated policy as malleable as Boris Johnson's explanations on which parties he attended during lockdown and why. With the press already defining candidates by their stances on transit culture war topics, it feels regrettably inevitable that this internal election will be fought over which side of the divide the party should fall. The SNP have come too close to backing deeply regressive policies in the past to not warrant concern over which path they will choose. And that column was by Steph Payton. From the National, Monday the 20th of February 2023, from the comment section, will Scotland's next First Minister lower our shameful drug death rates? By Peter Cryant, drug safety activist. Having met with Nicola Sturgeon on more than one occasion, I am positive that one of her deep regrets from her time as Scotland's longest serving First Minister is being unable to reduce Scotland's drastic drug death toll over the last few years. No progress has been made since Scotland declared a national mission, and the outgoing First Minister said she would take personal responsibility. Drug deaths remain out of control, with the latest figures for 2021 showing 1,330 fatalities in a single year. When the SNP came to power in 2007, Scotland recorded 455 deaths. We are now consistently record some of the highest drug death rates per head of the population in the world. Signs of progress. Suspected drug deaths reported by Police Scotland fell in the first half of 2022. However, as reported in the National, they rose again at the end of the year. We won't know until July, when official figures from National Records of Scotland are released, if any real progress has been made. These are not just figures to be bandied about. In the last 10 years, from 2011 to 21, nearly 10,000 lives have been lost, each death someone, and most, if not all, preventable. When I first met with Nicola Sturgeon and Drugs Minister Angela Constance in January 2021, I was glad to hear that £5 billion extra was being invested in drug services immediately, and from April 2021, an extra £50 million will be invested for the next 5 years on top of the existing budget. However, we are yet to see any impact. Questions must be asked if the money has been spent in the right areas, or if we are rehashing policies and mistakes we have seen go wrong in Westminster for decades. At the same time, Scottish Government ministers continue to apologise for the lives lost, yet seem unable to reduce the catastrophic death rates. So what will a change of leader bring? Frontrunner Angus Robertson's last extensive comment was to blame Westminster, which Nicola Sturgeon tried to steer away from. Kate Forbes' likely stance is unclear, but her leaning to the right in certain issues could be mirrored by her drug policy stance. Hamza Yousaf has stood on both sides, saying that drug deaths sit at the feet of the SNP, but also saying progressive drug laws are a priority after independence. The biggest impact could be from a reshuffle. Could the new leader replace Constance? She has now been in post for nearly as long as Joe Fitzpatrick, who inherited budget cuts rather than extra funding. Will the SNP go back to blaming Westminster, or, most worryingly, will they go down the Conservative road already travelled with abstinence as a top priority, support the road to rehab bill, and again not follow the evidence to get the basics right with a good dose of optimism of substitute medication, and introduce new ways of supporting people, such as diamorphine assisted treatment, DAT that, along with other substitute prescription and overdose prevention centres, OPCs, has helped countries such as Switzerland practically eradicate drug deaths and harms that were spiralling out of control nearly 3 decades ago. Within current frameworks we could open OPCs. If I was breaking laws, Police Scotland would have to shut down the unsanctioned service I ran in Glasgow for nearly a year. It proved impact, running on a budget of just £25,000 for the year with limited hours. It reversed 9 overdoses and saved 8 lives. In key locations, these health centres could not only save lives, but also introduce people into life-saving drug treatment. Could the current drugs minister turn the tide? Possibly, but a lot rides on the leadership. Will the new leader see this as a priority, or will it be marked for after independence? Any reshuffle means building new relationships. I have met the minister numerous times as part of my role with the charity Cranston, and we have discussed at length the potential for us to work with them in supporting OPCs and offer a more effective DAT service in Scotland. If there is a new drugs minister, this may cause more delays. With devolved health, policing and crime, so much more could have been done years ago. Many lives could have been saved. Currently, services are not meeting the needs of the people trying to access them, with only 40% of people experiencing problems with substances estimated to be in any form of treatment. The new leader of the SNP has to be brave, break away from the drug-free utopia and war on drugs narrative, and face the issue head on. Our family and friends are dying, on average 3 people every day. A sorry at the start of every ministerial statement is just not good enough. And that was a comment piece by Peter Cant, a drug safety activist.
The National Politics on Wednesday, the 22nd of February. Ben Macpherson rules himself out of the SNP leadership contest. An article written by Adam Robertson. Scotland's Minister for Social Security, Ben Macpherson, has ruled himself out of the SNP leadership contest amid speculation he would run. Writing on social media, he said he had been uplifted by all those who'd encouraged him to run and that he'd considered seriously whether or not to launch a bid. As things stand, only 3 candidates have declared themselves to be in the race. Mr Macpherson said, "I've been uplifted by all the people within and out with the SNP who've been in touch in recent days, encouraging me to stand in the leadership contest. I've also considered seriously if the situation would benefit from the inclusion of a 4th option or another progressive choice." He added that he believes he has more to contribute, having served effectively in various ministerial roles over the past 4 years. He continued, "For various reasons, I don't feel that now is the right time in my life and development to put myself forward for such a responsibility and challenge. I'll continue to work to progress positive change for Scotland." Mr Macpherson also called for a respectful and honest debate about building on our strong record, how to realistically and effectively bring about constitutional change and bring people in Scotland together as we move forward. Candidates in the contest have until Friday to receive more than the threshold of 100 nominations from at least 20 local branches. If more than one candidate should pass that mark, then an election will be triggered, culminating on March the 27th. An article written by Adam Robertson. The National, Politics, on Wednesday the 22nd of February. Councils given 11th hour cash boost in the final budget. An article written by Gregor Young. Councils have received a last-minute boost of £100 million, the Deputy First Minister has announced. Speaking in the Stage 3 debate on the Budget Scotland Bill yesterday, Acting Finance Minister John Swinney revealed the Scottish Government had received a £146 million boost from the UK Government and said part of it would be spent on funding a pay deal for non-teaching staff. The 10% cut to Creative Scotland's budget, which had caused outrage in the culture industry, has also been reversed. The money came from a £125 million boost in Barnet consequentials and also £21 million from a forecasting error. Councils had hit out at the Scottish Government after the publication of the draft budget, claiming the real term increase of £570 million could actually be as low as £71 million when ring-fenced government initiatives were accounted for. The new funding represented a 3% real terms increase in council funding based on last year's budget document, Mr Swinney said. I'm committing to provide local government with an additional £100 million to support local authorities and their expenditure, he said. This funding is designed to assist councils in making a meaningful 2023-2024 pay offer for non-teaching staff, recognising the critical role that those staff play in delivering frontline services. Mr Swinney added that he hoped the funding would result in a swift agreement being reached with staff, which would avoid the scenes of last summer when refuse workers walked out, leading to rubbish piling up on the streets. Taken with the £156 million announced last week as part of the pay offer from government to teachers, an offer that was summarily rejected by the biggest teaching union, Mr Swinney said the uplift resulted in local authorities being given £793 million more in real terms compared to last year. He added, as a result of the decisions in this budget, the total funding available to councils to support local services will be nearly £13.5 billion, plus the revenues from any local decisions on council tax. This is equivalent to a 3% real terms increase compared to the 2022-2023 budget bill. Mr Swinney's appraisal does not take into account in-year uplifts to council budgets. When asked where the funding for the teacher pay offer, £33 million from this year's budget and the rest from next year's, had come from by Conservative MSP Stephen Kerr, Mr Swinney said he had forced ministers to take hard decisions to save funds. He added that he hoped there would be no mucking about from opposition parties and that they would support the passage of the budget. The Deputy First Minister had previously said he faced a £100 million funding gap in this year's budget that would have to be closed, but he told MSPs yesterday he was confident he could balance the budget by the end of the financial year. Meanwhile, an extra £6.6 million will be given to Creative Scotland, Mr Swinney announced, reversing the cut in the draft budget to ensure the agency did not have to rely on lottery funding. The budget will increase taxes on higher and middle earners, with all people in Scotland earning more than £43,662 facing a rise in income tax to provide extra funding for the NHS. Mr Swinney previously urged MSPs to back the government's proposals, which he said provided resources where they're needed most. Tory finance spokesperson Liz Smith said it was important to focus on the highest earners as well as those most in need to grow the economy. She told MSPs, "We have to make sure we're also helping those that are at the very productive end of Scotland and who want to come and live and work and invest in Scotland, because that is as important as looking after our vulnerable communities." Labour's Daniel Johnson, the party's economic and finance spokesperson, highlighted the SNP's leadership race, saying the new leader would inevitably make changes. He said, "This is not a budget that will last. I don't see any of the leadership candidates, once elected, leaving the budget well alone." Lib Dems leader Alex Cole-Hamilton said the budget was not good enough, calling for the National Care Service Bill to be abandoned. MSPs approved the budget by 68 votes to 57. An article written by Gregor Young. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of February. Failures of Met Police to probe Boris Johnson over Partygate goes before the High Court. An article written by Xander Elliotts. Whether or not a legal challenge against the Metropolitan Police's failure to investigate Boris Johnson thoroughly during the Partygate scandal can proceed is set to be decided in the High Court. A bid is aiming to make the London Police answer to why they didn't bother to send questionnaires about 2 law-breaking events to the disgraced former Prime Minister, despite junior government staff being fined for attending those same events. The action is being brought by Good Law Project and Brian Paddick, a Lib Dem peer and former Deputy Assistant Commissioner with the Metropolitan Police. Joe Moham, director of Good Law Project, said, "We can't understand, and the Met won't disclose, how Boris Johnson dodged fines for going to parties that junior civil servants were fined for attending, but what it looks like is special treatment for the powerful. I don't care about Mr Johnson, and nor do I care about £100 fines. What I do care about is the rule of law. It must apply without fear or favour, or everything will fall into the sea." Mr Paddick said, "My sole motivation is to ensure everyone is treated fairly and equally under the law as a result of the police carrying out their duty without fear or favour. Many fined for breaching lockdown rules will find this difficult to believe without further explanation from the Metropolitan Police." The High Court will decide on Wednesday whether or not the hearing can proceed. Good Law Project said their case focuses on the Met Police's failure to even send questionnaires, their primary method of investigating Partygate events, to Mr Johnson regarding 2 lockdown gatherings that he attended in November and December 2020. A number of civil servants and officials who took part in these events were sent questionnaires and ultimately fined. It's the second time that Good Law Project has taken legal action against the Met over Partygate. In January 2021, the force U-turned on its initial decision not to investigate the parties held in No. 10 Downing Street and Whitehall after the Good Law Project issued legal proceedings. Ultimately, the investigation led to the issuing of 126 fines for law-breaking to 83 individuals. Mr Johnson and then Chancellor Rishi Sunak were just 2 of these individuals. An article written by Xander Elliotts. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of February. Health Union recommends members accept pay offer. An article written by Dan Barker. Scotland's largest health union has recommended its members accept a record pay deal offered to NHS workers north of the border. Nurses, midwives and paramedics are among those who will see their pay packets rise by an average of 6.5% on April the 1st, after the Scottish Government announced last week it would spend £568 million of taxpayers' money on the wage rises. Yesterday, Unison became the latest union to recommend its members accept the deal after its Health Committee endorsed the offer ahead of a member vote this week. Committee Chair Wilma Brown said, "After careful consideration, Unison's Health Committee is recommending members accept this offer and that we get the pay into people's pockets as soon as possible." However, Ms Brown said that the ongoing pressures created by the staffing crisis are at the forefront of our members' minds and are fuelling their frustration, and added that the fight around staffing levels and fair reward for hard-working NHS staff continues to be our priority. In the deal announced by Health Secretary Humza Yousaf on Friday, workers on the Agenda for Change pay scale will see rises as well as a one-off payment of between £387 and £939, depending on what band they are on. Mr Yousaf, who announced his intention to join the race to become the next leader of the SNP and First Minister on Sunday, said that if workers accepted, it would mean they were by far and away the best paid anywhere in the UK. Under the proposals, those on the lowest band, Band 1, will see their pay go up to £23,240 in 2023-2024, an increase of 7.14%. They will also receive a one-off payment of £387. Meanwhile, those on the highest part of Band 9 will see their pay go up by 3.33% next financial year. Over the past 2 years, the lowest paid will have seen their pay packets go up by 19.26%, while the best paid will have seen it go up by 5.4%. The union's 50,000 workers on this pay scale, which also includes domestic staff, managers and admin workers, will vote on the deal between today and Friday. Unison's move came after the Royal College of Nursing, or RCN, recommended its members accepted the deal, which will raise the wages of 160,000 health workers. Julie Lambeth, the union's Scotland board chair, said on Friday that the proposed pay rise would make a positive difference. But the RCN warned ministers that if its members vote against the new deal, it will be looking to announce strike dates. The union had previously rejected the pay offer made by the Scottish Government to NHS workers for 2022-2023, but talks continued in the hope that a deal could be reached over pay increases for the coming financial year. The Royal College of Midwives will also ask its members if the offer should be accepted. The pay rise means paramedics in Band 6 will earn over £4,000 more than in 2021-2022. Porters in Band 2 more than £3,750 and nurse practitioners more than £5,900 extra. After the deal was announced, the Health Secretary said, "We have taken difficult decisions to find this money within the health budget because we know that our staff are the very backbone of the NHS and we're committed to supporting them, particularly during a cost of living crisis." An article written by Dan Barker. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of February. Teachers' strikes target constituencies of Nicola Sturgeon and John Swinney. An article written by Adam Robertson. Teachers have started strike action in the constituencies of top Scottish Government politicians, including the First Minister. Many schools in the 5 affected areas will be closed for 3 days from Wednesday as the Educational Institute for Scotland, or EIS, escalates industrial action in the long-running dispute over pay, with a further 3 days planned next month. The union has singled out areas covered by Nicola Sturgeon, Education Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville, Scottish Green Education spokesman Ross Greer, Deputy First Minister John Swinney and Katie Hagman, the resources spokeswoman for local authority body COSLA, for further action. This will be on top of national strikes on February the 28th and March the 1st, and another 20 days of rolling walkouts across Scotland's local authorities between March the 13th and April the 21st, following strikes earlier in 2023 and late last year. Parents have voiced concerns over the targeted action, branding it inequitable and unfair for pupils in the affected areas. It comes after the EIS rejected the latest pay offer put to it by Ms Somerville, the MSP for Dunfermline, which would have meant a 6% pay boost backdated to April 2022 for teachers who earn up to £80,000 and a further 5.5% from the start of the 2023 financial year in what is the 5th offer put to them. EIS President Andreen Bamford said the resolve of the teaching workforce to push for a 10% pay rise remains. EIS General Secretary Andrea Bradley said, "Today's intensification of strike action is a direct result of the failure of the Scottish Government and COSLA to deliver an acceptable pay offer to Scotland's teachers. As a result, this intensified strike action is targeted directly at the politicians with the ability to deliver a better pay offer that can end this pay dispute, just as is happening in health." She added, "Parents and students have every right to be angry at the fact that local and national politicians continue to collude in withholding a fair settlement from Scotland's teachers." She said after taking legal advice, it's up to individual EIS members if they wish to enter into voluntary agreements with the Scottish Qualification Authority to mark exam scripts. EIS members will take 3 days of strike action in Glasgow's South Side, Dunfermline, Perthshire North and the part of Clydebank and Mulgai constituency that lies within the East and Bartonshire Council area between February the 22nd and February the 24th. A further 3 days of strike action will take place in these areas and also in Ms Hagman's Mid-Galloway and Wigtown West ward in Dumfries and Galloway between March the 7th and March the 9th. Leanne Maguire, chairwoman of the Glasgow City Parents Group, said it does not support the targeted action, warning it could increase inequality and that parents are concerned about missed learning. She told the PA news agency, "We're coming up to exam season now and young people are trying to maximise the amount of teaching time and in-class time that they can have to revise for their exams, and it seems really inequitable and unfair that pupils in that area are going to have 6 less days of in-school time than other areas of Glasgow. So that's why, as a committee, we just cannot support this type of action in any way." The Scottish attainment gap continues to widen. That's a fact. It's not exactly narrowed or anything, and particularly the issue that we have is the areas within the Southside constituency. The majority of that is areas of high deprivation, so these young people are already disadvantaged during education as it is, and to then add another 6 days on top of that just further disadvantages them. In Perth and Kinross, where Mr Swinney is MSP for Perthshire North, around 40 schools will be closed between February the 22nd and February the 24th. In the Eastern Bartonshire Council area, which is part of Mr Greer's regional constituency, 9 schools will be closed on both the February and the March dates. The majority of schools in Miss Sturgeon's Glasgow South Side constituency will be closed, while in Miss Somerville's constituency 27 primary schools will be shut and secondary schools were considering whether they could offer any learning for some groups of pupils. Miss Somerville, who has written an open letter to learners on the support available during the school strikes, said, "I had hoped that everyone involved in this dispute would agree that pupils should not have the worry of disruption to exams hanging over them. I'm bitterly disappointed, therefore, that the EIS is threatening continued industrial action in the run-up to the exam diet." She has appealed to teaching unions to suspend industrial action as pay talks continue. Miss Somerville added, "We're working with partners, including the SQA, local authorities and education directors, on contingencies for exams should industrial action continue. The national e-learning offer continues to offer a wide package of support that pupils preparing for exams can access from home while schools are closed." An article written by Adam Robertson. The National Politics on Wednesday, the 22nd of February. Televised SNP leadership debates set to go ahead. An article written by Xander Elliotts. Televised debates between the candidates for the SNP leader look set to happen after all 3 expressed an interest in taking part. The National understands that both STV and the BBC have been in touch with the party looking to organise televised debates, although planning is in the early stages. SNP officials say they're not opposed to televised hustings and that broadcasters have been told of the party's position. As it stands, there are 3 people in the running to take over from Nicola Sturgeon as SNP leader: Kate Forbes, Humza Yousaf and Ash Regan. All 3 have said they would be willing to take part in a televised debate, which STV has confirmed they're trying to organise. An STV spokesperson said, "STV has a track record in carrying such debates across Scottish and UK parties, and whilst we can't confirm details right now, we're looking into airing an SNP leadership debate." The BBC has been more tight-lipped, but the broadcaster did carry leadership debates for both Labour and the Conservatives in recent years. A BBC spokesperson said, "We're continuing to provide in-depth coverage of the leadership campaigns, and details of any relevant programming will be released through the usual channels." SNP members will be able to vote on their preferred candidate for leader from March the 13th to midday on March the 27th, with the winner announced that same day. An article written by Xander Elliotts. The National News on Wednesday the 22nd of February. Support package announced for deposit return scheme. An article written by Ross Hunter. The Scottish Government has announced a multi-million-pound support package for businesses in response to criticism of a major new recycling scheme set to launch later this year. By August the 16th, every Scottish business which sells single-use drinks, cans or bottles will be expected to have a take-back scheme in place, also known as the Deposit Return Scheme, or DRS. This means that consumers will pay an extra 20 pence deposit on these items, which they will then get back once the empty container is recycled at a reverse vending machine or recycling point. However, many businesses had expressed concern that the scheme currently being proposed would increase costs for the consumer and reduce the amount of choice available. In particular, small businesses criticised the upfront charges levelled at producers, which was around 2 pence per item for plastic bottles and 4 pence for glass bottles, and the fees to be imposed for failing to introduce a special Scottish barcode. Circularity Scotland has now announced £22 million of cash flow support for brewers, distillers, importers and drinks manufacturers to help them prepare for the introduction of the DRS. The Day 1 charge for producers who choose not to introduce Scotland-specific barcodes has been removed, as well as the Month 1 charge on deposit and producer fees for all businesses up to a threshold of 3 million units. This, according to Circularity Scotland, is aimed at helping small and medium-sized enterprises with their cash flow. 2-month credit terms are also being made available to all producers, regardless of their size. In addition, self-adhesive barcode labels will be accepted for producers placing less than 25,000 units of specific product on the country's shelves each year. David Harris, Chief Executive of Circularity Scotland, said, "We know that smaller producers in particular have been concerned about the cash flow impacts of the scheme, and these measures will address these concerns. We've already announced reductions in producer fees of up to 40%, while also being able to offer the highest return handling fees of comparable schemes anywhere in the world. These additional support measures further demonstrate our confidence in being able to deliver ongoing operational efficiencies once the scheme has gone live. We're committed to ensuring that the deposit return scheme works for Scotland, is cost-effective for business and helps protect our environment for generations to come." Circular Economy Minister Lorna Slater said, "This is a big and welcome change that responds directly to many of the concerns that have been raised, particularly those from smaller producers like craft brewers. It addresses initial cash flow challenges and provides a pragmatic and simple solution to the issues raised around barcodes for smaller product lines. This is a package that gives businesses the clarity and confidence they need to be part of Scotland's deposit return scheme. Over the last few months, I've been meeting industry officials regularly to listen to their feedback, and this industry-led solution has been designed in direct response to its concerns. I remain committed to a pragmatic approach to implementation between now and August the 16th. By working together, we can lead the UK in delivering a deposit return scheme which will increase Scotland's recycling rates from around 50% to 90%, cut emissions, tackle littering and address public concerns about the impact of plastic and other waste. The initiative comes as campaigners urge the Scottish Government to stick with the timetable for introducing the DRS, calling any further delay to the scheme frankly unbearable. An article written by Ross Hunter.
From the National, Wednesday the 22nd of February 2023, from the Culture section, crocodile fossil expected to sell for £15,000 at Scott's auction house. By Gregor Young. A rare fossilised crocodile specimen is expected to sell for between £10,000 and £15,000 when it goes under the hammer at a Scottish auction house today. It forms part of McTeer's Cabinet of Curiosities Part 1 through Time and Space sale, which begins at noon through the company's website. From 19th century busts to a study of a brain, the weird and wonderful all come together for the sale, described as a fascinating journey through time and space across human civilization, the animal kingdom, and the heavens above. Highlights include a Campo di Cielo meteorite, an Egyptian situla used in the cult of the dead, a proud Scottish golden eagle, and an anatomical skull with remarkably good teeth. The second part of the auction, the marine theme From the Depths, takes place tomorrow. And that article is by Gregor Young. From the National, Wednesday the 22nd of February 2023, from the Culture section, Dean Banks' latest restaurant, Dulce, included in Michelin Guide. by Gregor Young. A Scottish chef's latest restaurant has been included in the prestigious Michelin Guide after less than a year in business. Dean Banks' restaurant Dulce in Edinburgh has been included in the latest edition of the Michelin Guide, joining Banks' other restaurants Dean Banks at the Pompadour in Edinburgh and Harsh St Andrews. Dulce is a seafood bistro and wine bar, which has received stellar reviews since opening in June last year. Banks was finalist in the MasterChef The Professionals in 2018. He said that it was an honour to make it into the guide so soon after opening. We are absolutely delighted that Dulce has been included so quickly by the legendary Michelin Guide. We set out to do something very different from my tasting menu experiences at Har and the Pompadour when we opened Dulce. It's the kind of place I love, a relaxed and welcoming environment to have a few drinks and enjoy some spectacular dishes designed to showcase the very best of Scottish produce. It's a real honour that Michelin have embraced this concept and included us so early in Dulce's, that's Dulce, D-U-L-S-E, life. That's down to the hard work of an incredible team, with, of course, special thanks to our group executive chef, Dan Ashmord. The Michelin Guide said of Dulce, make it an occasion by starting with a cocktail on the ground floor, wine floor, before heading upstairs to enjoy terrific Scottish seafood. Traditional flavours, in dishes like Arbroath Smoky Tart and St Andrews Lobster Thermidor, sit alongside those boasting more of an Asian accent, such as Singapore-style mussels or crab, with red Thai curry. Whichever style you prefer, the quality of the fish and shellfish really comes through. Dean's first pub, The Forager in Dollar, the most recent addition to his growing group, has also been making waves with its menu of comforting pub classics with a twist. In fact, Michelin posted on social media at the weekend recommending The Forager. They said, The Forager, a pub with a big heart from Dean Banks in Cliffmanshire, Scotland's smallest county. Banks added that the praise for two of his restaurants in a single week was a real boost. It's been an incredible week for us. Times are hard on the hospitality industry, so to have two of our businesses acknowledged by Michelin, one online and one in the iconic guide, is a real boost to all of us. And that story was by Gregor Young. From the National, Wednesday the 22nd of February 2023. From the Culture section, Janie Godley gives fans health update during comedy tour. By Rebecca Newlands. Scottish comedian Janie Godley has issued an update on her cancer treatment as she embarks on her tour. The 62-year-old began her Not Dead Yet tour on February the 1st and, between dates in Greenock, she told her followers that her haemoglobin levels were back up despite the gruelling chemotherapy she is receiving. Haemoglobin is a protein in red blood cells that transports oxygen to your body's organs and tissues. It also transports carbon dioxide from your organs and tissues back to your lungs. Fans and friends congratulated Janie on the positive news, including Davina McCall, who wrote, "Fantastic news, can't wait to see you next week." Natalie O'Donoghue added, "Wonderful news, Janie. Looking forward to seeing you at the Comedy Fest." Another wrote, "The tweet has brought the biggest smile on my face today. Fab. Who knew going on tour could be so powerful?" Janie was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in November 2021 and underwent a full hysterectomy in January last year. She was given the all clear in June 2022, but shared the news in December that the cancer had returned and she would be requiring more treatment in the new year. And that article was by Rebecca Newlands. From the National, Wednesday the 22nd of February 2023. From the Culture section, NICOLA Sturgeon to chair Granite Noir event with Val McDermott. Report by Gregor Young. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon will chair a conversation with Scottish Queen of Crime Val McDermott at Granite Noir, Aberdeen's crime writing festival, organisers confirmed. Ben Torrey, Aberdeen Performing Arts Director of Programming and Creative Projects, said, "We are thrilled to announce that the First Minister will be joining us to share a conversation with Val McDermott, undoubtedly one of the world's stars of crime writing. Come and join us for what promises to be a fascinating, incisive and entertaining event." McDermott has sold more than 70 million books across the globe and has been translated into more than 40 languages. The second book in her new series, featuring journalist Ali Burns, 1989, is another bestseller for the author, and also made the First Minister's Best Books of 2022 list. McDermott is perhaps best known for her series featuring clinical psychologist Dr. Tony Hill and DCI Carol Jordan, which was adapted for TV as Wire in the Blood, starring Robson Green, Hermione Norris and Simone Labib. ITV's Karen Peary, based on McDermott's cold case detective series and starring Outlander actress Laurie Lyle, was screened last autumn. It was announced yesterday that a second series has been commissioned and will be based on the novel A Darker Domain. Sturgeon is a keen reader and has publicly commented that it gives her a lot of joy. She has long been a fan of McDermott's work, having first met her at the Edinburgh International Book Festival in 2015, and has regularly recommended her books on her annual Best Books list. McDermott will also be performing in Aberdeen with her cover band, the Fun-Loving Crime Writers, which features authors Mark Billingham, Chris Brookmeyer, Doug Johnson, Stuart Neville, and Luca Vest. Granite Noir returns tomorrow with a programme highlighting Aberdeen's history and atmosphere and celebrating the very best of crime writing. Tickets are still available for the conversation between McDermott and the First Minister, which takes place in Aberdeen's Music Hall on Friday at 8 p.m. Tickets for all events, including McDermott's conversation with Sturgeon, can be booked online at www.aberdeenperformingarts.com. And that piece was by Gregor Young. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the Politics section. Ash Regan accept Hustings challenge in SNP leadership race. Article by Xander Eliards, political reporter. Ash Regan has confirmed she will take part in the first major hustings of the SNP leadership campaign. It comes after this paper reported that the SNP's largest affiliate group, representing some 12,000 trade unionists, had challenged the three runners in the leadership race to appear at the debate on March the 12th. The National understands that SNP rules mean that no hustings can take place unless all three of the candidates agree to take part. Regan's acceptance means the ball is firmly in the courts of Humar Yousaf and Kate Forbes. The SNP trade union group, SNP-TUG, which is looking to organise a hustings in association with the National, said the event would be focused on issues of primary concern to all Scotland's working people and communities, particularly its 600,000 trade unionists, arising from the current cost of living crisis. Bill Ramsay, the group's convener, said, "It is vital that the next leader of our party and First Minister of Scotland is attuned to the needs and wishes of people across our nation for decent jobs and conditions, a strong NHS and public services, a just economy, a sustainable energy future, and more." In inviting the leadership contenders to the first major hustings event of this contest, we have stressed the link between these key concerns and the debate about the path of Scotland's future. We look forward to positive responses from the candidates shortly. The SNP-TUG said that further details of the event, which is planned to be both online and in person, would be made available after the candidates had responded. The group said that a major figure from the trade union movement, independent of party politics, had been invited to chair the event. Ramsay said, "This political conversation is about the leader of the Scottish Government as well as our party. We feel it is important that the chair should be someone of stature who can ensure the concerns of all trade unionists and the great majority of the working people and communities across Scotland are central to the debate." And the article was by Xander Eliards. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the Politics section. Nicola Sturgeon in letter to refugees on anniversary of Ukraine war. Article by Lauren Gilmore. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has told Ukrainian refugees that Scotland will be their home for as long as it needs to be, marking the 1-year anniversary of the Russian invasion. Russia invaded Ukraine on February the 24th, 2022, after Vladimir Putin announced a special military operation seeking the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Since the invasion, tens of thousands of people have died as a result of the conflict, and around 17 million people are currently displaced, either within Ukraine or as refugees across Europe. About 23,000 Ukrainians have been welcomed to Scotland through the Super Sponsor scheme. Sturgeon told refugees in an open letter, "It is with great sadness that the world will mark the first anniversary of Russia's latest illegal and unprovoked invasion of Ukraine on Friday. On this day, we will all pause to reflect on the many impacts of the war on the people of Ukraine. In particular, we will mourn those who have lost their lives. Every day in Ukraine, lives are disrupted and in danger. There are almost daily reports of atrocities, including Russia's barbaric missile strikes against civilians. Our hearts go out to all Ukrainians, including those who have settled here in Scotland and in other countries. I know how much you fear for the safety of loved ones back home and yearn to return to your own country and way of life. All of us wish a speedy victory for Ukraine and a resolution which restores peace and ensures Ukrainian sovereignty, democracy and independence and territorial integrity. We also hope that those displaced by war can be reunited with their families, friends, communities and country. I hope all of you, amidst your anxiety and suffering, have been heartened by the scale of the international humanitarian response since the invasion. Scotland has so far welcomed more than 23,000 Ukrainians into our communities, the majority of which arrived through our super sponsor scheme. The national response is unprecedented, and we have worked closely with partners, local authorities and community groups to offer our Ukrainian friends a warm Scottish welcome. It is vital that we continue to support displaced people from Ukraine for as long as they need help. While I hope those of you who want to return to Ukraine can do so safely when you can, my message to those seeking sanctuary remains clear. Scotland is your home for as long as you need it to be. Slava Ukraini. And that article was written by Lauren Gilmore. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the Politics section, SNP leadership race, Kate Forbes responds to John Swinney comments. By Adam Robertson. Kate Forbes has responded to comments made by Deputy First Minister John Swinney about the leadership candidate's stance on equal marriage. Swinney questions whether the Finance Secretary's position on the matter made her appropriate to be leader of the SNP. He said that he profoundly disagreed with Forbes despite his own deep religious faith, after the candidate said she would have voted against equal marriage laws. Responding to the remarks, a spokesman for Forbes said, "The Prime Minister is a Hindu, the Mayor of London is a Muslim. So many will wonder why the Deputy First Minister believes a woman holding Christian views should be disqualified from holding high office in Scotland." Swinney did stop short of calling for Forbes to resign, with sources saying she intends to continue her campaign. Several key backers withdrew their support for her following her comments on equal marriage. Swinney previously told the BBC that Forbes' views had absolutely nothing to do with faith. He said, "I am a man of deep Christian faith, but I do not hold the same views." Kate is perfectly entitled to express her views, but party members are equally entitled to decide if someone who holds these views would be an appropriate individual to be SNP leader and First Minister. The Free Church of Scotland has said it is composed of people from all political persuasions, some of whom will not share Kate's politics, particularly over an independent Scotland. It expressed concern at the level of anti-Christian intolerance which has been displayed on social media and by some political and media commentators. A spokesperson said, "It is lamentable that Kate's honest adherence to simple traditional values would, for some, disqualify her from contributing to the public good of Scotland." Elsewhere in the contest, Ash Regan called for an end to mudslinging in the race. Speaking to STV News on Wednesday, she said, "I just want to put it a call for calm. I think that's really important at the moment. Kate and Humza are really valued colleagues. They're a really important part of the SNP. So I think all the mudslinging that's been going on just now needs to stop. Everyone needs to take a breath. We've all got to remember that we're going to be working together at the end of this." And that article is by Adam Robertson. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the Politics section, Starmer denies ditching 10 pledges. I've had to adapt some of them. By Lucy Garcia. Keir Starmer has set out 5 national missions for a Labour government, contrasting them with Rishi Sunak's people's priorities. The Labour leader's plans are long-term goals, setting out how he would reshape the country if he enters number 10. However, Starmer faced questions over his previous 10 pledges which were set out during his leadership election. The Labour chief has appeared to go back on a number of these promises, which include public ownership of a number of public services. On a Thursday morning media round, he was urged to explain why voters should trust his new 5 missions after the 10 pledges row. On BBC Breakfast, Starmer avoided the question. Well, what these 5 missions are the reflection of what we need most for our country going forward, he said. What we need to do is unlock the potential of our country to get away from what I call sticking plaster politics. For too long, we've sort of let a crisis evolve and we put a sticking plaster on it. We just about get through it and then we get around in the same circle again. But pressed further on BBC Radio 4, he blamed the pandemic and the war in Ukraine for rolling back on his previous promises. They haven't all been abandoned by any stretch of the imagination, he insisted, but what I've obviously had to do is adapt some of them to the circumstances we find ourselves in. Since I ran for leader, we've had COVID. Since I ran for leader, we've had the conflict in Ukraine. Since I ran for leader, we've had a government that's done huge damage to our economy. What these missions are bringing together, the fundamental problems we face as a country, hard thinking about how we have the long-term solutions for those problems, and not many people disagree with these missions. What they want to know is, how are you going to achieve it? Starmer's missions, which will form the backbone of Labour's election manifesto, are a plan for the economy with an aim of securing the highest sustained growth in the G7 group of developed nations, build an NHS fit for the future, make Britain's streets safe, break down the barriers to opportunity at every stage, make Britain a clean energy superpower. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister's 5 aims are halving inflation this year to ease the cost of living and give people financial security, growing the economy, creating better paid jobs and opportunity across the country, making sure national debt is falling, getting NHS waiting lists down and ensuring people get the care they need more quickly, stopping the small boats crossing the English Channel with new laws to make sure that if people come to the country illegally, they are detained and deported. There is a long history of political leaders producing short lists of policy promises. Labour's successful 1997 election campaign included the production of a pledge card, while Ed Miliband's 2015 campaign involved a less pocket-friendly format, with his promises carved onto a stone slab. And that article was written by Lucy Garcia. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the news section, weapons firm BAE Systems sees record orders amid Ukraine war. Report by Gregor Young. Arms manufacturer BAE Systems saw record orders in 2022 amid an elevated threat environment after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Britain's biggest defence firm reported its highest ever order intake of £37.1 billion for last year, which saw its order backlog jump to £58.9 billion. The FTSE 100 listed firm posted flat operating profits of £2.4 billion, but said earnings on an underlying basis rose 5.5% to £2.5 billion, as sales on its preferred measure rose 4.4% to £23.3 billion. BAE Systems said, "While it is tragic that it took a war in Europe to raise the awareness of the importance of defence around the globe, BAE Systems is well positioned to help national governments keep their citizens safe and secure in an elevated threat environment." The group says it expects sales to rise further in 2023 by between 3% and 5%, while underlying earnings are forecast to increase by 4% to 6%. BAE, which builds ships, submarines and fighter jets, lifted its final shareholder dividend payout to 15.2p from 14.3p in 2021. But shares in the firm fell 3% in morning trading on Thursday, as its pre-tax profits came in below city expectations at £1.99 billion against £2.11 billion in 2021. The group had hiked its outlook in November on the booming global military spending. Charles Woodburn, chief executive of BAE, said, "We've delivered another year of strong results across the group. Our record orders and financial performance give us confidence in delivering long-term growth and to continue investing in new technologies, facilities and thousands of highly skilled jobs whilst increasing shareholder returns. And that article is by Gregor Young. From the National, Thursday the 23rd of February 2023, from the news section. Yorkshire man planning to climb near Glencoe failed to return home, by Lauren Gilmore. A man who travelled from Yorkshire to Glencoe intended to climb a hill on Saturday has not returned, police have said. Kel Sambrook, 33, travelled from West Yorkshire on Saturday and arrived in the area at around 3:30 p.m. with his beagle dog. It is understood he was planning to climb Buckillie Etive Moor and return on Tuesday, February the 21st, but failed to return. His car, a black Peugeot 208, was located in the Three Sisters car park in Glencoe. Mr. Sambrook has not made contact with anyone since arriving in Glencoe on Saturday. He is described as white, 5 foot 8 inches tall, medium build, ash blonde short hair, ginger/blonde stubble, blue eyes and a West Yorkshire accent. At the time he went missing, he was believed to be wearing khaki and black Merrell hiking boots, khaki and black Revolution Wraith outdoor trousers, a dark and light blue hooded Peter Storm waterproof jacket, and a grey North Face beanie hat. He was carrying a grey and yellow Merrell backpack. His dog is a medium-sized beagle, which is white with brown markings on its back, and is called Bane. He also had a green two-person tent which he was planning to use. Police have asked anyone who may have been in the area and saw Mr. Sambrook and his dog to contact them on 101, quoting reference number MPR 739 484 0223. And that article is by Lauren Gilmore.
That concludes this week's edition of the National Podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at Review and review and tell your friends about our service.